Good evening and welcome to the franchise tag. Good, the great this time, and the ugly, not the bad. We've decided we keep double dipping on the bad and the ugly. The negativity is just not what the franchise tag is about. So this time we're going to go the good and the great, and of course keep the ugly. And of course, hot seat Cold Throne will be returning at the end of our show as well. James, Johnny, welcome back. It was a fantastic weekend of football, but the news that has come out today is Jets GM Joe Douglas has been removed from office. He has been replaced as well. However, the name is escaping me at the minute, but it looks like there's a little bit of a change up for the New York Jets, Johnny, with Joe Douglas now out of the building. Daniel Jones, quarterback for the New York Giants, has officially been dropped down to the third string quarterback, Tommy DeVito. As we remember him from last season, the great memes of his agent and the Italian stallion. He'll be taking over quarterback duties over Daniel Jones and Drew Lock. Drew Lock will be backing him up, and Daniel Jones goes down to third string after their loss in Munich. Legendary kicker Justin Tucker had a very terrible weekend for the Baltimore Ravens, as hasn't had a great season. There has been some rumors that maybe they're going to be sort of dropping him, even though he has been absolutely remarkable for them for years and years. It has been debunked, though. Coach Harbaugh has said that they're not looking to change that up at the minute. So long may Justin Tucker rule for the Baltimore Ravens, even if it is losing against the Steelers, which we may talk about at some point. Coach Doug Peterson, coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, still remains in his job after his 52-6 loss to the Lions. The only news we've had out of Jacksonville is, unfortunately, I think Gabe Davis is now out for the season. That is not the news I think we thought was going to come out of Jacksonville over the weekend after that loss. So Coach Doug still remains. However, we've got a lot of football and a lot of season to play. Let's begin this evening with the good, and we are looking at the quarterback for the Denver Broncos, Bo Nix. And is he outperforming Washington Commanders' Jayden Daniels, quarterback, to get that offensive rookie of the year? You know, there's been a lot of focus, James, on Jayden Daniels to begin this season, but after Bo Nix beat the Falcons 38-6 over the weekend, I mean, he's entered the conversation now. He was fantastic, 28-33, 307 yards, 4 touchdowns. Denver's really suiting their gameplay to him as well as a rookie. What are you making of him so far?
Yeah, slow start, obviously. I mean, it took a little bit of time to get going for him, and that happens a lot with rookie quarterbacks, so that shouldn't be any great surprise. But yeah, really impressed with how he's come on, and I think he's definitely in the conversation now. Jayden Daniels and him have sort of had opposite introductions into the NFL. Jayden Daniels started really hot and has tailed off, and Bo Nix took a little while to get going, but is now pretty much on fire, really. You have to look at, obviously, the head coach in Sean Payton, who is renowned for being quite QB friendly. And he's definitely helped initiate him well into his team and into the league and everything else. I mean, I was looking at some stats for him before, and he's really has been really impressive, and has done something that I think even Denver fans couldn't have anticipated at the start of the year. You know, he was a bit shaky coming out of college. There was a reason. I think it was either 6th quarterback taken in the draft. But yeah, I mean, you just said his stats from the weekend, 145 passer rating. But you're looking at, he's number 10 out of 35 qualifying quarterbacks in EPA per dropback. He's got an average depth of target of 8.4 yards, 33% of his passes going 10 plus yards downfield. You know, he's benefiting from a really solid O-line. You've got, you know, Garrett Bowles, Quinn Miners, Mike McGlinchey, and a few others, solid veterans there that will really have helped him be able to establish his game. And, you know, he's only facing, I think he's facing something like 31% of pressure on his dropbacks, which is a testament to those guys. He's got one of the lowest pressure to sack ratios in the league. I think it's about just over 14. So you can see that unit is operating well as a whole, and that allows him to then go and do what he does. But, you know, he's getting the ball out quickly. He's not holding on to it too long like he was doing at the start. He's good with his legs. He's got good reads downfield. His intermediate throws are really solid, really picking out plays in really tight windows, like a sort of 3-4 year starter would do. Really impressed with him. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he finishes the rest of the season. And Denver are in that middle place where they could still make a push for the playoffs at the moment. I don't think anybody was expecting that at the start of the year.
Yeah, they now sit at 6-5. When you look at them head to head, I mean, Johnny Bo Nix, 234 completions to Daniels, 202. Yards wise, they are neck and neck, really. 2,338 for Daniels. One below that is Bo Nix, 2,275. Bo Nix, 14 touchdowns to Daniels, 10. And both of them, Daniels only 3 picks. However, Bo Nix does have 6. I mean, what is impressive, I think, and what I think maybe we knew this about Denver, less so than Washington, but because it's more Cliff Kingsbury as coordinator with Daniels, whereas it's head coach with Peyton with Bo at Denver, is both offensive units are catering their offense completely around these players, aren't they? They have really done well to make sure that these players are protected and they're using them in the correct way. I mean, Bo Nix, though, went lower down the draft, and some of these quarterbacks, a lot of people said he was one of the most NFL ready. Yes, he had the lower ceiling compared to everyone else, but he was NFL ready compared to other quarterbacks that were coming out, the Calebs and the Jaydens of the world. But how impressed are you with how they've both sort of adapted into the NFL? And I know James said that Jayden sort of had the boom and is maybe tailed off a bit, and Bo's now getting his boom now. But, let's see it from 11 playing for the whole season so far.
I think it helps that both franchises are coming off a little bit of a reset in not completely. Obviously, I think both teams, we can say, Washington has got some great players around Jayden Daniels. The same with the Broncos. They have, one of the best defenses in the league. But I think in terms of, obviously, with Sean Payton coming in last year, Russell Wilson, obviously his career in Denver tailed off. I don't think, I didn't know what to expect from the Broncos of 2024. And I think, they certainly have taken a huge bet on their head coach, Sean Payton. And you can see that has made such a difference, not just to, Bo Nix. Obviously, he's the quarterback that Payton's been able to bring in. But if, the Broncos were first overall, I'm not sure he would take Bo Nix, but he's been able to do wonders in that regard. And I think similarly in Washington as well, there's a great environment for Jayden Daniels to walk into. There's no, animosity around the ownership. Obviously, there's still question marks remaining in terms of, the stadium and, the franchise name. These are off the field issues, which I think have no bearance on that impact the actual team itself. So definitely, I would say environment is a huge thing for both these players. I think what James has said, they're obviously coming at this from opposite angles. I do think that Bo Nix would have to do something extraordinary to knock off Jayden Daniels, despite his drop off in recent weeks. I think what makes the Broncos, what has been so impressive about the way Nix and this offense is playing, it's just how varied they look. We've been able to see Marvin Mims get his role has evolved in the team. We're looking at receivers who we hadn't heard of in terms of Devon Bailey, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Javonte Williams. We thought he was washed last week. He comes back and has a good touchdown week. He's a player I've always enjoyed. I've always thought he's obviously struggled with injuries, but it looks seemingly that he was going to be ushered out. That's possibly not the case. And it obviously helps with the offensive line playing as well as they have. I think, at times, I think when the Broncos have played a really, really good defense, we saw against, the Ravens, I think even the Saints as well in the year. I think they still won that game, but Nick struggled. And it was, clear that he looked weak, when he's having to drop back and he's under pressure. But I think, the schedule seemingly is in the Broncos' favour to go on a bit more of the run and make the playoffs. I wouldn't put that against them. And I keep banging on environment, but you look at the teams who have that alpha in charge. Sean Payton's that man. Everyone knows their job. From the coordinators, the coaching staff, to the players, to the young players like Penix. They know exactly what they need to do, and I think they're building a really good football team. I don't think this time last year would the Broncos have thought they'd be a few games away, or a few wins away from making the playoffs this year. I'm not sure they would. So yeah, really impressed with the Broncos. They're continuing to improve. Penix, exemplifies that. He is continuing his trajectory, and long may it continue. I really hope he does put up that run and put himself well in contention for the Rookie of the Year.
Can I ask a question? Because you mentioned about what he would have to do, Penix, to get Offensive Rookie of the Year, but if the Broncos do make the playoffs in the division that they're in with the Chargers and Justin Herbert, and obviously the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes, does that not automatically really seemingly put him up there because over Jayden Daniels, maybe because it's probably a more difficult. I mean, at the start of the season, you wouldn't have picked Washington. You would have looked at Philly, you would have looked at Dallas, but Dallas have obviously had their issues, and so there are external factors to take into consideration as well. But I think just getting it, if they're both sitting in the 7th seed at the moment, if he gets them to the playoffs, I don't know if, unless Jayden Daniels plays absolutely out of his mind, it's going to be really difficult to make an argument against Penix, I think.
And CJ Stroud last year won it, going 9-6, 4,108 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That was a step. Now I don't think either of these. I don't know. I don't think either of these get to that amount of yards himself.
And Nix has already had more interceptions.
I think a lot of it is to do with media hype around highlights reels. Jayden Daniels has obviously already got that.
There is that. Yeah.
His throw to I think it was Vele, the Broncos. Yeah, it must have been 40 yards or so, covered over the corner. An insane throw. More things like that, and he's not going to do is cause any issues. Yeah, I agree. I think stats wise, they're probably not in the conversation of CJ Stroud. He had one of the best rookie years we've ever seen. But I think if we continue to see these guys make those sort of plays, then that's only going to help them out.
It'll be really nice to have it as actually a 2-horse race for a change, because normally it's just one guy blows it out of the water. It'd be so nice to see it where you really could go either way.
And we forget that CJ Stroud had a very bad running game. He didn't have Joe Mixon last year. He had to throw to win games. He did. But I think you're right. You're saying about the teams they've lost to, Johnny. They've lost the Seahawks, the Steelers, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Chiefs. I mean, outside the Seahawks, who have got an all right defense, that's 4 of the top maybe 5 defenses in this league at the minute. Like that's really impressive to be where he is at now. And I think he's doing the right things, and Denver is also putting him in the right places to do really positive things. So long may it continue, and I really do hope it is a 2-horse race as well, because that'd be a lot of fun to see. The great this evening. I mean, I might have to sit back for this one and just bask in the glory of what you're going to say about my team, because of course it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've gone 8-2 after beating the Ravens, not even scoring a touchdown on the Ravens, and they still beat them. I mean, that's pretty impressive in itself. I'm just going to let you guys go straight ahead on this. Johnny, you can begin with. I mean, I will interject where I can as a Steelers fan, but for once, I'm just going to keep a little. Well, I say for once, keep quiet. I'm quite good at keeping quiet a little bit, but we're going to focus on my franchise.
Well, that's a nice thing for you to have, Freddie. Yeah, I mean, I think just taking the game against
that was the slow pull out of the dagger I just pushed into both of your backs about the Raiders.
Well done, Johnny.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously coming up against the Baltimore Ravens, I think these sort of matchups are obviously very low scoring, but we know that the Ravens obviously came into this game as probably the best offense in the NFL, with Lamar Jackson playing, even better than he did last year. We know what Derrick Henry's been doing, even the receivers getting into the game. It was quite shocking actually how good the Steelers were able to contain the Ravens. The odd play, I think, to Zay Flowers, but Derrick Henry just couldn't get going. And I mean, on the flip side, this was, I think, obviously Russell Wilson's worst game as a Steeler. He wasn't able to, throw those sort of moving balls, and they weren't able to sustain drives. Obviously, not scoring a touchdown. But I think with this defense as good as it is, they are in such a prime position, not just to obviously win the division and make the playoffs, but go on a real run to control their own destiny and grab the 1 seed. They've got, I think on paper, you look at their running, they obviously have to play a lot of their divisional rivals again. Obviously that will be tough, but I think there is no reason why this team, if Russ can, get back and get the, talking about the disappointments of the offense, they're not being able to get the receivers in as much. Mike Williams, we obviously saw he can produce with his touchdown against the Commanders. It was, a struggle game, and he's going to have that again. But yeah, man, with this defense, I think I think you guys are going to go a really long way. We've seen how teams often suffocate against premium defenses, and Lamar Jackson, I'm sure Patrick Mahomes will have a similar sort of game if and when you guys match up. I genuinely think you could go a really long way this year. So long way to continue. I think you've got defense. Obviously, we've talked so much about, but the big, they've just got such a tight unit of this franchise, and they have had for such a long time, and it's really, really good to see. And that's my praise. For the moment, let's see what James has to say.
Well, we'll talk about the future, I suppose, in a moment. But let's just keep on this game for the second, James. Our defense was exceptional. Was absolutely exceptional, and I can't say, as much as I'm a Steelers fan, I can't say I've seen a game so well-rounded by the defense in a while. Like, there is always something I find with his defense. Like I've said for a while, but our secondary has not been that great. But even the secondary was really deep, was really good against this team. I mean, they held the Ravens to the lowest offensive yards they've had this season, which was 329, which is still a large chunk of yards, but it's the lowest they've had this season, and no one's been able to stop them. I mean, the offense statistically isn't pulling up any trees, but could you argue if Russell Wilson started the season that maybe on paper it would look a little bit more, statistically it would look a little bit more of a top end offense, I suppose. I mean, he's definitely found his grip. I know. I always say, like, a litmus test for a team is when they win when they're not good. And I thought we were exceptional, but we didn't really create anything off offense. This defense is very good up front. Their secondary is not that great, and we did take moments where we exploited that, but maybe not enough moments. So, though there's exceptional play on the defense, offense still has a bit to learn, doesn't it? And actually, that's probably a little bit frightening for other teams, because if they start to click on all cylinders, that's where it might become, this team might make a really deep playoff run. Yeah.
I completely get where you're coming from. I don't know what it would look like if Russell Wilson had started the season. He's not the same player. Obviously, he's not that off-script playmaker like he was in Seattle. He's 20 of 23 passes behind the line of scrimmage or fewer than 10 yards downfield. He's not generating massive yardage like he used to, and he's actually the cause for concern is that as far as Russell Wilson goes, he's operating his EPA per play is minus 0.32. So there's massive room for improvement there. I liked at the end where they started, where they brought Justin Fields in and they started going that dual threat, keep them on their toes kind of thing. I thought we would see more of that.
I like that as well. That's the first time we've seen that since Russell's come in.
Yeah, I actually thought we would see more of that at the start of the year, but maybe it's just sort of, I love Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is the guy who, if you look at coaches in the league you would like your team to have, I think most teams would look at Tomlin and go, yeah, he is the guy that I would want my team to get behind. He is just cool as a cucumber all the time. And you could see on the sideline where he was at the end of the game, one of his criticisms before has been of game management. And you saw at the end where he was calling timeouts because he was reading what the opposition was doing, whether it was lining up on offense or a defensive read, and forcing them to make an alternative play to go to their B read, if you like, their B option. Sorry. And that was really clever play from him. So when you put all of this sort of stuff together, it's a really promising concoction of great defensive play, strong coaching, and just a functional offense up until this week. There were issues, obviously, and every team has them. Every team has these games. But, you're just going back to the defense, 10 players generated at least one pressure. That was equaling something like 41.7, nearly 42% of pressure rate on Lamar Jackson's dropbacks. That guy just did not have time anywhere. And that's one thing that a lot of teams haven't been great at doing. But Pittsburgh have always been really good at it, especially against him. He is they are his nemesis, maybe Patrick Mahomes as well. But, you've held opponents to fewer than 20 points 4 out of the last 5 games. That is a recipe for success. All right, you'd like it if you weren't kicking field goals to win games every week, but Chris Boswell has been
phenomenal.
Been really, really good for years, really underrated. There is some concern with the offense and with Wilson, I think, but I think there is the chance to work that out. I would like to see the dual threat thing a little bit more. I thought Justin Fields looked good when he came in, and it takes some of that pressure off. I don't know. Russell Wilson is slightly egotistical on whether he will be wholly accepting of that, but I think Tomlin is the guy to be able to soothe that and make it manageable. I've been really impressed with them. It's old school football. It's hit them hard, punch people in the face, not literally, but just getting all up in their business and just getting after teams in that really old school way. I'd second what Johnny says. I think they can go really far, and it would be really interesting to see them come up against some other high-powered offenses to see how they slow them down. But yeah, really, things are looking really promising. Again, just a real surprise, I think, from what we were expected in the off-season. I think a lot of people, obviously Steelers fans aside, perhaps expected them to maybe a little bit more middle of the pack. They didn't seem to necessarily have this QB thing sorted. So this has been a really pleasant surprise in a really difficult division. And yeah, like Johnny said, a lot of division games still left. A really weird. I think you hadn't played a division game up until you got nearly all of them left.
So basically, I said this at the start of the season. Basically, so we've played Falcons, Broncos, Chargers, Colts, Cowboys, Raiders, Jets, Giants before our bye in week 9. When I said at the start of the season, I said it is imperative that we get into that bye with a winning record and a reasonable winning record. And I actually hypothesized at the start of the season, but we could have gone 8-0 to start with. I think we might be good enough to go 8-0 to go to the bye. But I was also very mindful that probably wasn't the case. So I think I had us at around 6 wins. And then since the bye, we've played Commanders and the Ravens, won both of them games, which are both games. Commanders, I think it's starting. I probably thought we'd probably win, and Ravens, I said we'd lose. We now play the Browns, the Bengals, the Browns, the Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bengals. So yeah, a lot of it.
Five division games still left. That's tough. That's tough at the back end.
Browns at Bengals back, and then Browns hosted in the next 3 weeks. If the Browns weren't what they are at the
minute, a weird scheduling quirk, isn't it? Don't see that very often.
And it's obviously it's not been the same for all the teams, but for us it has been. But yeah, Bengals were sort of playing at the wrong time. If we played the Bengals maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe I think we're probably playing the Eagles at maybe the wrong time now. But let's just see how they go. The Chiefs, with the Chiefs are playing them Christmas Day as well, so a lot of onus on that. The game.
They don't like playing Christmas Day. Even the Raiders beat them on Christmas Day, so they don't like playing Christmas Day. Get out.
No, we do not. I mean,
take them down.
At the minute, we're third in the playoff race. If it was to end tomorrow, we'd probably be looking at playing either the Chargers, the Ravens, or the Broncos. I think all 3 are winnable games. I think we get out of the wild card spot and we go to the next round. For me, at the minute,
yeah.
So that's, and then on the bubble, you've got the Colts, Dolphins, Bengals. You could go. The website has got Jets, Patriots, Browns, Titans, Raiders, Jags all still in the race, obviously, but I doubt they are in the race. So then, you know what?
Still a chance.
I don't know. Yeah, no chance. Yeah, no chance. So then, you know, when you get to that, I think we go through the wild card. I think we do that, and then it's about keeping this consistency with this defense going forward. Now, it is not going to be elite like it was against the Ravens every week. I understand that, but if we can just keep a little bit of that, injuries obviously big thing. We've got to keep it. Hopefully, not get any injury.
That's going to be your biggest issue. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to hopefully keep that nice and clean, and hopefully I'll be celebrating a bit more Steelers come January, February. We shall wait and see. We will move on to the ugly for this evening, and it is unfortunately Kirk Cousins, who has had back-to-back defeats with the Atlanta Falcons, a couple of bad performances. Is it now that we may see the number 8 pick of this year's draft, Michael Penix, former Washington quarterback, may make an appearance? It was reported they're 6-5 at the minute, and they lost 38-6 to the Broncos over the weekend. It was reported on Wednesday that Cousins was limited and had problems with his elbow and throwing shoulder. However, he got to near the game, was quoted as saying, "I'm 100%." However, James, with the gameplay we've seen from Kirk at the minute, I mean, are we trusting he's 100%? I know they're going to the bye this week, but is it worth maybe giving Penix a bit of a run out to then look sort of down the line to later on in the season? Because the Falcons are in a position at the minute where they should be looking down to towards the end of the season because of the position they're in the division.
Yeah. I think a bye week's come at a great time for them. No, I don't believe Kirk Cousins that he was 100%. That is what any quarterback would say in that situation. I would expect nothing less. But obviously, age and previous injury history, you know, coming off the Achilles and everything else, is really going to play a factor. They've been a really frustrating team to watch. They've had a lot of injuries. They've been smashed by injuries. I think they had 18 players listed on the injury report during the practice week leading up to the Broncos game, and eight were ruled out. I think you had. So I've got a list here. Hang on. Sorry, D. Alford, Mike Hughes, Antonio Hamilton, J.D. Bertrand, Troy Anderson, Charlie Werner, James Smith-Williams, and Taquan Graham. And then throughout the game, they also lost Darnell Mooney, Zach Harrison, Kevin King, Casey Washington, and Nate Landman. That is a lot of players for any team to have to deal with, but a lot of them are not massive injuries. And so this bye week might serve as a great respite for them to be able to recuperate, to be able to gather themselves, and to be able to come back with a little bit more of their arsenal on the field. The other thing that's been really frustrating to watch for them as well, and that's wiped off a lot, it's just penalties. Just penalties everywhere. Just stupid penalties. I mean, Bijan Robinson would probably have about 200 more yards if the penalties weren't such a big factor for them, but it's been since week one. It's just wiping out promising drives, plus yardage plays, and they're just... when you couple that with the fact that they can't get stopped... Sorry, I know this was a little bit more Kirk Cousins based, but if your defense can't get stops, their defense is ranked 25 league-wide in total yards allowed per game, 26 in scoring, and 30th in opponents' drives, ending in scores and third down conversions. And I think they might be last in like sacks or something as well. If your defense can't get stops, you're relying very heavily on your offense. See, I did have a tangent back in. You're relying so heavily on Kirk Cousins to produce game-winning drives, and he's just not got the weaponry out there on the field at all times. The line isn't holding up very well, and he just doesn't look fully himself. And it's just not a recipe for success there. They should be better. They should have a better record than they do have at the moment. But like I say, there's been too many silly factors like the penalties, like not being able to get stops and stuff that just are not allowing the offense to rest. And it's not a whole team performance from them like we perhaps expected. I think we thought at the start of the season these would be quite a well-rounded team. They've got weapons at receiver, at tight end. They've got a great running game. Cousins, we thought, providing he comes back from the injury okay, it is pretty steady. And it's not that he's been bad, I don't think. It's just he's got too much pressure on him all the time, and he's on the field too much. Would I start Penix now after the bye, probably not, and I would be surprised to see him. I think there's enough there with Cousins at the moment to say that this can get back to functional and they can get back to winning ways. Like you say, the division they're in is still, it's something that is a division that they can get out of. But for me, they've been more frustrating than they've been bad. And they just need a real look at themselves this week that they've got off and say, where can we make small changes, just incremental changes to get us back to average, and then we can look at progressing again from there.
Johnny, do you think, because they're obviously 6-5 is still not a great record? I mean, they're going into the bye week this weekend coming, and then they've got the Chargers, are at the Vikings, are at the Raiders, they're hosting the Giants, they're at the Commanders, and then hosting the Panthers. I mean, I see on that schedule 3 wins. I'd say Raiders, Giants, Panthers, and I think they probably lose to Chargers, Vikings, Commanders this point. That's what? So 3-3, then they go 9-8. Does that win the division? I mean, if they lose 3 games in a row, Chargers, Vikings, Raiders, do you then go, well, we're maybe not competing for the division now, and because other teams are in, the NFC gets a bit more open. It's the problem is they picked him so high and it was so polarizing that any slip up Cousins will have, that there is going to be a few murmurs for Penix, aren't there? And the last 2 games for Cousins, 306 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, that's empty calories there against New Orleans, and then 173 yards, 1 interception against Denver. I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? That you've got the monkey on your back and when you're not playing well.
Yeah, I actually think, if we consider everything, the Kurtz actually really improved the Falcons. If we consider where this team was last year, the big issue is their defense, their special teams have just been woeful. And that was, personified. Obviously, the offense played very poorly against the Broncos, but, a Broncos team, which, we talked about the not that they're not playing great, but the expectations we had on that team at the start of the year, the players they have, the explosive players that they have, were able to absolutely rip apart the Falcons. And I think this year, Kurt has at times, in the win over the Eagles, I think one against Tampa Bay as well, where he was able to, put the team on his back and lead them to, I think he leads the NFL actually this year in fourth quarter comeback. So I don't know. I think obviously he's had a difficult couple of games, and Penix, when he came in, maybe this is because the offense was so poor, looked okay, to be honest. He's throwing some passes around, and I think he will be a good quarterback in the NFL at some point. But I think we're probably rushing a little bit too much into this narrative. I mean, the pick itself is obviously so confusing, and you're right to say, the reason that we're questioning the position of Cousins is because Penix was taken so early. There was expectations on him. If he doesn't deliver, then the next man up, essentially. But this team is obviously better than they were last year, but I think we're still seeing the consequences of obviously great players in Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, who've been taken. Those 3 premium picks have been taken with almost luxury picks, I suppose, for the offense. They've got, this year they've obviously signed Matthew Judon, who's done nothing for the Falcons. I'm not even sure I can name many more players on their defensive front. I don't think they've invested in the right players and the right play callers on that side of the ball to make them competitive. I genuinely still believe that they have one of the best offenses in the NFL with Kirk, but they just don't have a balanced team, and I think that's the real issue for Atlanta. I think they'll still make the playoffs. I think they can still win the division. I think they can probably shock maybe 1-2 teams. I think James is right. The byes come at a great time for them to regroup. I can see them going on a little bit of the run but they have to improve on defense and special teams because it's cost them too much this season. You know, we could be in completely different scenarios. Flip side, the Falcons could be even worse, given how well I think Kirk's been able to play in helping their comebacks this year. Or even better than they are if we had a bit more of a confident defense. This is I'm really down on the Falcons defense, but from what I've seen over the last month or so, has been very poor. But I still think Kirk can take them to the playoffs. Whether or not they can win a playoff game, I think is yet to be seen.
You are correct, but you're sort of like tongue-in-cheek correct, because yes, he does lead the NFL, but he is joint with Pat Mahomes, Jared Goff, and Kyler Murray, technically.
That's a pretty good group to be in with.
However, game-winning drives.
He's not a bad quarterback.
Yeah, well, he's also second in game-winning drives with 3 as well, but Mahomes is top with 4. However, 3 again is with Goff, Murray, and Jalen Hurts as well. So, he has got that ability to drive the ball down the field and to do that. The problem is people like me who were very into the draft when it happens, not so much into college. However, I'm getting a lot better at that. I sort of want to see these players, and there's a sort of an itch for it. And again, like we said, when there is that dip in form, suddenly it's, you took that pick. Like, why did you take that pick in the end? And it becomes sort of polarized on maybe seeing them. And I do think I completely agree with both of you. The bye is coming at absolute perfect time. And I actually think Kirk is the best quarterback to have for the games they have left. They are in the driving seat in the division in some sense. They're going to want to win the division. They're not going to get the first round bye. They know that. So the division's there for them to take. As Johnny's right, on paper, offensive wise, they've got one of the best offenses in the league, but it is on paper. We haven't seen it in real life just yet. We've seen a little bit of it with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Carl Pitts, Bijan, Tyler Algier. And they can certainly win some games. It's just needing to do it in a more convincing fashion and on a more consistent basis. But again, go back to Johnny and your point as well, James, with the defense. When you are overworked, it was sort of the Kirk's problem in Minnesota is none of his defenses were that good, and he was almost overworked, and that's inevitably what led to injuries, is having more time on the field. I'm not saying the Vikings defense injured Kirk Cousins. I'm not saying that, but you're on the field more, there is that inevitability. And
you're going to get hit. You're going to get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And certain quarterbacks in this league at the minute are not coming back the same way. Kirk does not look, not that Kirk was ever mobile, but he is clearly, there is still clearly repercussions at his age of having an ankle injury like he did. So, it's working it that way as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do moving forward, and hopefully trying to get that playoff spot, because that's got to be in their eye, in their eye at the minute, and in the rear view mirror for what they want to be doing in January. Tonight, James is going to judge mine and Johnny's, and he's going to pick a winner out of the two of them. We'll obviously start with hot seat to begin with. I'm going to let you go first, Johnny. Who is on your hot seat this week?
It is Woody Johnson and the New York Jets. Just burn it down, burn. What on earth is happening? Aaron Rodgers, out the door, please. Obviously, we've seen Joe Douglas, Robert Salah. Get out of the Jets franchise, because it is beyond a joke. I don't even care now. Obviously, I do care because I'm mentioning it now. But yeah, it's a disaster. Please, yeah, we just need a big change in ownership, and that is it. I'm going to say.
That's a pretty good one, James. You got to admit, right?
Oh yeah. I saw it coming. If we're going to be honest,
I thought you saw it coming. Mine is not a hot seat as in need to get rid of him, but it's definitely something they need to watch, and it is Jordan Love. Yes, he got the win, but this quarterback has a lot to learn. Yes, he is more Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and we are seeing that, but he needs to learn about this gunslinger mentality. He's first interceptions at a minute with 11. He just needs to rein it in. I almost think the Packers might not be successful the rest of the season because it may be because of him in a way. And that sounds awful, but he just needs to just put a little bit of a lid on it. Not every play has to be boom or bust. It can be methodical, and he just needs to sort of rein it in just a little bit. I still think he's a very talented quarterback. I think he's the right decision for the Green Bay Packers moving forward. But I think there needs to be a bit of a conversation of, right, we know you can throw it really far and really well, and you can take the risky plays and you can run as well. But now let's learn clever football, because we don't want to be in a situation again where we need a block field goal to beat the Bears, and how bad the Bears have been this year. So, yeah, that's who I'm bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I'm going to give that one to Johnny. I appreciate what you're saying about Jordan Love. I do. I think he's not been helped by the very drop-heavy team. Their receiving core is leaving a lot, a lot of potential points, a lot of potential plays wanting. But yeah, I get your point. I do think there is a conversation to be had with someone there. Let's just take a step back and steady on a little bit. This isn't every game doesn't need to be a shootout,
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think 1 point to Johnny.
Well, cold thrown, I'm going to start this one this time. Seems as I let Johnny start this one. And this week, it is definitely a receiver for the Detroit Lions, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Remember the name. Not that you didn't know it already, but we need to remember the name, and it needs to be in the top 5 conversation more, even the top 3 wide receivers in this league. He is amazing. 11 receptions, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did not drop a ball against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Currently second in touchdowns this season. I do not get why he gets forgotten about in the receiver conversation. It is a size thing. I think that is all it is. I think it's a height and size thing. He has got one of the best set of hands in the NFL. He's consistent. He can play over the top. He can play underneath. He is the safety valve for Detroit. He gets this offense going, and he makes massive plays for Detroit. I get that he's not the size of Justin Jefferson. I get that he's not the size of Jamar Chase. And I'm not saying he is better than Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but he needs to be in the conversation now of a top 3 wide receiver in this league, because what he does for this team is phenomenal.
Good. I like that. Yeah, that he's got ice in his veins. He is one cool cat, that's for sure. He's looked really impressive this season. He had a great season last season. I didn't think he was going to kick on from there, but he looks even better still. And Detroit have got a guy on the hands for a long time. Yeah.
Beat that, Johnny.
Well, to beat that, it needs to be someone special, and that man is the new face of the NFL potentially from this year, Josh Allen. Put on the play of the season, potentially one of the best touchdowns I've seen in a long, long time. In defeating the undefeated Chiefs, and the Bills have put the NFL on notice as the crowd cheered MVP for Allen. They are making waves. They look like a really, really solid team. The receivers around him, obviously, injuries abound, but Allen put the team on his back, scored an unreal touchdown, and long may it continue for the Bills. They look sharp. And they could be the new team to dominate the AFC. You
can't keep grabbing the headlines, Johnny. You gotta get to the root of what the people really want.
I was until about 5 minutes ago going Geno Smith, so I don't know where I pulled that out of the bag.
Wow, okay, that's interesting. Seems as I really had a go at him like 3 weeks ago. So he was on the hot seat 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago for me. So yeah, what do you reckon, James?
Well, I am maybe slightly drawn by my bias of anybody beating the Chiefs, but I do think Josh Allen's performance was very impressive. Amon-Ra St. Brown is top tier, but I think the way that Allen was so cool under pressure in a massive game, in a massive spotlight, one that they needed to win if they've got any chance at that number 1 seed. He looked by quite a decent way the best quarterback on the field in that game. So it's another one to Johnny, I'm afraid, Freddie. Sorry about that, but I think that was a very close race. I will say that I like all picks.
absolutely do not mind losing Josh Allen. Like I do not. If anyone wants to go back and listen to the Monday show of our review of last week of this weekend's games, I gave Josh Allen so much praise. He has been one of my favorite players in the NFL for a moment now. I really enjoyed the Bills. I really enjoyed Bills as a franchise. I know it's probably bad of me to say as a Steelers fan, but like as an AFC rival. But I've wanted them to win the Super Bowl for a fair few years now. Would not hate it if they won it this year. Like I just think they deserve it. I know people say like, well, you don't deserve anything. Well, these guys have been really good for a long time. They deserve to be in that conversation. They deserve to be going there. So I don't mind that at all. James,
give me some Bills Lions. That'll be a game to remember, I think.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Now that would be the Super Bowl I want to see. Two franchises that I really do enjoy. That would be great fun. James, Johnny, thank you very much for joining me. And thank you everyone for watching and subscribing to our YouTube and on all of our social media platforms. We have the college show back with Andrew and Alex in the next few days as well. The betting show this weekend with Andrew and Adam for all your betting needs to win you some mega bucks. Obviously, gamble responsibly and be aware of maybe just don't put all your money on what they say. You know, they're great guys, but don't put your mortgage on it. Let's just be sensible about it. Anyway, what you can put your mortgage on is that we'll be back next week and we'll see you all again very soon. Have a good rest of your week.